one. Good morning everybody. It gave me a bit of a start then. From a wet and cold and windy Coffs Harbour. It's dreadful outside. As you can see, jumper. I had a jacket on just a short time ago just to stay warm just before we warmed up, before we got started. So anyway, that's our problem today. It's cold and wet and windy. Alright, let's get some stuff done today. Just welcome to all those people who are watching who are in the cold and wet. I do hope you're safe and
stay out of the water.
Stay out of the weather. Yeah, stay warm. Hope you're tucked up in the TV, near a TV somewhere. But anyway, enjoy your day. So now we're at a stage where there's lots of things happen to a box. Now originally what I did was I showed you this little box here with the lid already fitted. This was the fourth box of our series 2, and it's we went through various processes to get there. One thing I didn't show you was how to set up the lid in the framing jig. And so during the week I was working on a few other boxes that I've got on the go, and I didn't actually show you how it all looked when it's all set up in the jig. Now this was one of the early ones. If you remember last week, what I did is I showed you what the frames look like with two butterflies and so forth, and this box demanded 2 because of the size and the length of the lid. But this is how it was all set up. It was just a matter of putting it all together, gluing it all together, fitting it into the frame, and then squeezing it up so that it all fitted quite nicely, which is what it does. And you can see all my joints are quite nice, and the butterflies fit in are really close. So we've got some quite a good setup. This one here, I've got wide butterfly on the outside, narrow one on the inside. I've got another box over there that's the reverse of that. I've got one of the boxes that we're working on is actually one of those. Same again. So various things can be done with that setup. Now remember, I did tell you last week that we had, this is what it looks like. Of course these things come in a plastic bag. The setup for the jig was 4 of these and 12 T-nuts, which are set up in your framework. And as I mentioned earlier, or when I spoke about it last week, the important thing to remember is the thing has to be perfectly square. Otherwise you're battling uphill right through to go. Now when you get to this stage here where everything's dry, this one's been sitting around for a day or two, it's time to start dressing up the butterflies. So here's the process that I go through. You can do it any which way you like. What I then tend to do is I cramp my lid to something, and then I'm going to use 2 clamps, I think. from Japanese Tools, I've got this flat saw, and it's just a matter of trimming off the excess. Now these go all the way through, of course. So just trimming off the excess, and then what's left over we can trim up with a chisel. So we can slowly work through with a chisel and just take off what we don't cut off. And if you go through that very carefully, now there are a lot of people who say, well, get a mallet, mate, and just tap away with a mallet. My little chisels, I don't use a mallet on those. They're quite a delicate chisel, and they're just for hand use, just a palm chisel. If you're going to use a bigger chisel, by all means do. If you haven't got any used palm chisels.
Did you say you've got more control with a palm chisel for
Yes,
this very tiny job?
Yep, for a little job like this, you want a bit of control. You can see I'm just taking off little bits at a time. I think my chisel needs a little bit of a touch up on the stone. And if you just keep working at it. Now remember, we're cutting end grain here, so it doesn't, you can't just plane it, take it straight off like you would if you're cutting along the grain. Remember, we're cutting across the grain. A little block plane might even do the job. So any tool that you can find. And once you get most of that off there, it's just a matter of a little bit of sandpaper.
What grit would you use?
When you start off, it's rattling. When you start sanding, I'm using 180 here. You can use whatever you like. If you think that you can do it with a bit of 240, by all means you do that. But eventually work your way down through the grades. And there we have nicely fitted butterflies. On the joint needs a little bit more sanding. It needs to be flattened off a little bit more.
But you wouldn't start with a really coarse sandpaper, would you?
Oh yes, you'd always start with a coarse sandpaper.
Yeah, but how coarse? Because you've got the frame that's already had work done on it.
You can always use 120
right, okay.
or 100 grit. I'm using 180, basically because that's all I had available at the time.
Nice.
So you end up with a couple of nice butterflies, and then you just work down through your grade to sandpaper as per normal, and you'll end up with a nice little lid. So I won't go through the rest of them because that takes a little bit of time, but that's what we're going to end up with. Here's one that I've already started with. Again, it's the same. It's a single. Probably a little easier if you're starting with something is to start with the single and then work your way through it. Different frame, different centre panel. It's got a piece of camphor in it. The other one had a piece of bloodwood in it. So various timbers will give you different looks, different visual effects.
And that centre panel's looking a little bit dull at the moment because it hasn't been sanded up, has it?
Correct.
Fine. Yeah. So there's some gorgeous colours in there that'll really shine.
Should look quite nice.
Yeah.
So that's what the lids look like. Now, when you get them finished, this is what they look like. This one here has been sanded, and it's been I've got it sanded, and it's actually basically ready for fitting. And I've done both sides of the lid, so they both look pretty nice. Now the way I can tell this is the top is because I've rounded over the inside edge of the insert, and yeah, it should look pretty nice. And this is our box that we're going to fit it to. So the first thing we need to do is look at, we're going to hinge it. Now the types of hinges, now this is always a bone of contention on Aussie, forget about wooden hinges. metal hinges for a box like this, there's a number of options. Unfortunately, a few options are really not acceptable. Now, these are the cheap hinges. They were available at Carroll's Wood Turning Supplies, but Jim assures me or tells me that he will no longer be carrying these. They are a very cheap and hinge, and often you need to do quite a bit of work to them to get them to fit. But if you want to go upmarket, and most of us have a budget in mind for what we want to do with hinges. If you're looking at Brusso hinges, these are the US ones, unfortunately the budget for those has gone out the window as well. A pair of these costs you $75 US, which is totally ridiculous, unless of course you have something in mind for them. These are 3/4. They also make a set of 1 1/4, and these ones are $89 a pair, unfortunately. So they are, that's current price at the moment. I've looked it up on the website before we started, and again, very expensive, but really good quality hinge. Opens to 95 degrees, perfect for something like that, like this. Now, the Crawford hinges, which are these long side rail hinges, actually don't work with this type of box. There's nowhere for it to fit. It's a stop hinge as well, so if you're using a box that has the top off it, you could probably sit it in and have hinges on the side. Now they're very good. They're very high quality, but again, very expensive, and they need to be imported from the UK. So you've got the Brusso ones and these ones here. Now that's my understanding of ordinary hinges for a small box like this. If it's just a box that is going to be something for a bit of a utilitarian type box, well then of course you're going to go to the cheaper type of hinge. There is one other option. Let's go back to this one here for a start. This will fit quite nicely. Looks a bit small, but it will work. The screws on it, if you'll notice that the screw holes in the head of it are quite large. So the screws are quite long. Doesn't work very well when you've only got 10 millimeters of material to work with when you're trying to fit that into there. So if it's recessed into here, you don't have a lot of room for the screw. It'll come through the top. If we go back to the little box, you'll see that I've got some screws set up, and they're only quite tiny. They're actually too small for those bigger hinges, for the Brusso type hinges. So they're obviously not going to work very well either. So that's another thing to keep in mind. Now, as I said, there is another option. You could use butt hinges. Now a butt hinge opens all the way around, 180 degrees. Okay? And they work like that. But the problem with that is you have to add a keeper of some description to get it to work so that it doesn't flop all the way open, because as soon as it flops all the way open, what you end up with is pressure on the hinge and the screws, and it eventually pulls the screws out. But you can overcome that by doing a couple of things. Number one, I know Jim has this stuff available. You can do this. This is one of my really early boxes, and it has butt hinges, but it also has this little chain. Now not too many people, well, it depends on your taste whether you like the chain or not. It looks quite nice in this box because it has the black and the red and all those sorts of colours, sort of, you know, they give it a bit of character. So a nice little piece of chain, and you can buy that. I'll just put it in there. So there's a little packet of it, and then you've got all the little keepers and things that go with it as well. So there's quite a few bits and pieces that you need to sort of fiddle around with, where it catches on the end and all that sort of stuff. So that's one option. Another option is this one here, and this is one that I've sort of thought about and decided it might work quite nicely. When I open this box, you can hardly see the little keeper on it. It's got butt hinges, and this here is this stuff. I'll have to put that on the white bench. There's a keeper. You can see that it's a piece of, actually it's nylon fishing line. So if you go to your local fishing store, you can get something that looks a bit like that. But you need the little crimped sleeves on both ends, and you can also purchase split rings in that colour. Very fine. So
there you go.
That's what the little keepers look like, little sleeves.
Come on.
So that one cooks quite. Pam's lost focus. It's the cold. So as you can see, it disappears in the box, and the box looks quite nice. So it depends on what you like as to how you're going to fit the lid. Now let's get on to what I'm going to do here. I'm going to fit these cheap version here. Okay, so I'm going to fit those. I thought I'd just give you a bit of an idea of what is available and what things you can do depending on the box, the status of the box, what you're using it for, and so forth. Okay, so I'm going to use these hinges here. So what I have to do is I start setting up for it. So let's put them aside for the moment. They're going to go, so bring them out. And what I'm going to do is I want to choose the front of the box and the back of the box. And when I choose the box, what I'm looking for is making sure I've got perfect dovetails on the front. Anything that's a little bit odd, could be size of the hinge, could be a fault in the timber. It could be anything that goes, oh, that's better off the front, that's better off the back. And Pamela's just pointing at one, which is saying,
with this side. If you have a look on the other side again,
and the other side
has a
little fault here, right? Yeah. But the majority of the timber is quite plain.
Yeah, it's not really a fault, but it does tend to distract the eye.
This one has the fault in the middle.
Yeah, doable.
So probably that'll be the front of the box.
Yep.
Which means this is going to be the back of the box, and my hinges are going to go there. Now where you put them is up to you. I like them spread out a little bit. Some people like them a little closer. Some people like them really wide apart. It depends on what you want on the box, so how you want the box to look. So again, it's a visual thing. So my distance that I generally cut them from the outside edge is about 45 millimeters from there to the inside of the edge. And as you can see, I've already got my fence set up with the 1-inch router bit. Now that 1-inch router bit is exactly the same size as my hinge. Now this is only a simple box, but what I want to do is I want to make sure that I still have things fitting nicely. And one of the things that I get asked all the times, and I get it every single time somebody talks about hinges, is what's the quickest way to do it? Is there a quick way? No, there's not. This is just a way of doing it, and you need to take your time and have some patience when you do it. So keep that in mind as you're working through it. If you try to rush it and try to sort of shortcut different ways of doing it, you'll find that you might end up with gaps around your hinges and that sort of thing. But this is a simple way of doing a hinge, the most simple way I can think of anyway to do it. So we'll cut the rebates for the hinges first, and then we'll fit the lid to the frame. So let's do that. Now, when is this that's the back, isn't it?
Yeah.
Okay. So, the first thing I want to do is I want to set the height of my router bit. Now, the thickness of my hinge, I should put them where I can find them. The thickness of the hinge, that there needs to be the same here. Okay, so that thickness there is 2 mil. So what I'm going to do here is I'm just going to mark 2 millimeters, and when you're doing this, be very, very accurate. You can see my pencil is extremely sharp. Don't know if you can hear that, but it's raining outside. Okay, so I've got my 2 millimeter mark there. Now what I'm going to do is set my, well, I've already got it there. Drop that down a tiny little bit. I'll set the top of the router bit. I'll just check the other side to make sure it's not higher on one side than the other. It is. Just make it come down a little bit. What you don't want is you don't want it to cut too deep. Two mil. Now when I check my distance with my ruler, what I'm checking here is I'm making sure that I pass through the tips of both of those router bits, and you can see my tip of this router bit here is at 45, and I'm flush up against my fence, so I've got a tip there and a tip there. That's 45, and this is 1 inch. Now don't confuse 25 millimeters with 1 inch, because they are two different measurements. Put these off here. I'll need to get a pair of earmuffs. I'll just spin this around a little bit so you can get the camera on that. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to push my fence, my box up against my fence, and I'm just going to cut all the way through. Alright. So, ears on everybody. Now, when you do that process, you'll see there's a little bit of tear out just there. I use my chisel and I just trim that off. And a little piece of sandpaper. Light sand. You can do the same with the butt hinges with this one, and there we have a perfectly fitting hinge. Okay, so that's what it's going to look like when it's done. So what I need to do is the other side. So this time, make sure the back is towards you. Sit the box over the route a bit. Now the idea there is to go very, very slowly until you hear things happen. There's my little bit of tear out. Just need to trim that off with my chisel.
That takes a lot of the angst out of it, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Cutting the trench this way.
So there's my rebates cut. That's probably the easiest way I know how to fit a hinge. Now it's time to fit the hinges. Today may go on a little bit, basically because I have a large number of things to do, and they're all fiddly. So there's my 2 hinges. That's where they'll fit.
I'm just going to show
Nice
everybody
and
your counter while it's still reasonably neat with all the things you're going to use today. There's a lot going on, isn't there?
A lot going on.
All right, let's check out these hinges.
Okay, so when I put the hinge in, what I've got here is I've got just a piece of flat wood. I set it flush with my top and clamp it in place. What that gives me is a stop for the hinge, so I can push the hinge hard up against that stop. You've seen these before. This is my little drill with a countersinking on the top of it. And all I do is I make sure I'm vertical. I've got my finger on the hinge and pushing it in. And pushing that in. Oh. Need a screw for it.
Big pudgy fingers.
Yeah.
Trying to do delicate work.
I'll get it.
This.
It's not playing the game.
No.
Just a sec. I'll just have to
frustrating.
I'm going to re-drill that. The right way around. Try that again.
And the point of doing a nice straight recess is that you may need to take the hinges off a couple of times.
Correct. We will be taking them off a number of times. And there are reasons for that. Okay, so that's one hinge. You'll notice I only put one screw in at a time, because if I have to alter it, at least I've got a stable position for the screw. I know Jim Carroll has some of these screws available, so You should be able to get some of them. He's just not carrying the hinge anymore.
That's the stop hinge, but there's...
Yeah.
Yeah.
The stop hinge. I think he's still got the rest of the hinges.
Yeah, yeah.
Just not having the stop hinge. Okay, so there's my 2 hinges. And that's probably the quickest way I know how to fit the hinges. Now, the thing with this is, these little hinges have a square back on them. They're very much the same as the Brousseau hinge. They have a square back on them. The English Crawford hinge, the Hawthorne Crawford hinge, has a round back on the back. So you don't need to do the process that I'm going to follow with. So if you can find hinges that are like that, at a reasonable price, by all means grab them. But these ones, you can see when you open the hinge, I don't know if you can see any of that, but you have square corners and you need to relieve the back edge of the box to allow those square hinges or square backs to slide back and forth. Now, one of the things that I've noticed is on some cases you have this much of the hinge sticking out the back. Now, I'm not keen on that. I prefer to have less, and that's why we have to go through the process that we're going to go through next. So we set the box up on its side like that. What we need to do is we need to put a little bit of relief from that point there. The relief has to be there and there because we can't close that hinge up. The same here. Okay, so therefore we need to take the hinge off. Now when you take the hinge off, you need to mark that hinge. Again, that's because we're working with a cheaper version of the hinge. We need to mark that hinge goes there. So when I take the hinge off, the box is sitting like this. This is the right hand side of the box, and so on the bottom of the hinge it touches the box. I write an R. So basically I'm locating that hinge for that position. Your markings are not going to be seen because they're going to be underneath the screws, of course. This one's going to have an L, of course, it's going to be the left hand side. And I put the mark on the bit that fits on the box. Just one of those habit things that we get as a box maker. Create habits. Okay, so how do we fix that now? This takes a little bit of time. And we have to make sure that we get it pretty much right. So what I have here is I just have a triangular file, and the beauty about this triangular file is the same width of the space that I need to do the relief on, and I just about 45 degrees file through. Just create a little chamfer. Do the same on the other side. Now luckily I found a file that is exactly the right size. And you can find them. It's just a matter of having a little bit of a look around. Heavy. I don't know if you can hear that rain, but it's pretty heavy. no reason to go outside right now.
Not even for coffee.
After you've done this a couple of 100 times in different boxes, you eventually get to the stage where you can recognise what depth you need. Don't always get it right, but of course you give it a shot. So right hand hinge. One. I'm not quite sure this one's going to work, but let's give it a go anyway. Yep. So now I have the hinges actually fitting. So a little bit of relief in the back there, just to allow those hinges to fit. Or just to close. No, I'm going to use one up a little bit more. Okay, so the next step is to fit the lid. Now my technique here is, if I can fit that as snug as possible without being too tight, but a little bit, just enough to be able to get it in and on and off. So over to the drop saw. Actually, we'll go to the bench, Pamela. Come back to the bench.
I'm all over the shop. Sorry everyone, that was messy.
I've got to put some measurements on. I've forgotten about the measurements. Okay. With our ruler, make a fairly big square. So the first thing you need to do is you need to know the measurement between the inside of here and the inside of there. And so I've got 235 exactly.
You see that.
235 mil. Inside to inside. Okay.
Oh dear.
Somebody having a go?
Yeah, no, it was just, somebody said dancing with the stars today, Pam.
Okay, now what I want to do is I want to find the centre of my lid. First of all, I've got to work out which is the front of the lid and which is the back of the lid, and that's going to be based on what the panel looks like. All my joints are the same. The framework is nicely fitted, and all I'm looking for here is my, does it look better that way up because it's going to open this way, or does it look better that way up?
Look, you know, so they're both beautiful because they both look like an arid Central Australian landscape. So
they do.
That looks like a hill with the bushes in the background. That just looks like quite a plain dirt.
Okay, well then this will be the front.
Yeah.
Okay, that's the back of the box. Okay, so this is what we do. Can you hear that rain, people? I can hardly hear over the top of it. Now what I'm doing is I'm just finding my centre. Love this Luthier's ruler. 120 and a half, 122 and a half. Just need to be exact with that. Find my centre. Again, be very, very accurate with this. That's my centre. Centre of this. 110, 112, 113. Okay, so from centre to out here is 115, 117 and a half. 115, 117 and a half. There you go. Sit my centre here. What I want to do is I want to trim off both ends. It was 117 and a half, 15, 16, 17 and a half. So we're not taking much off. 110, 115, 116, 117 and a half. Okay, square line off there. Turn over and we'll square the line up here. Now, when we use this as the back edge, and that's going to be up against the fence on the saw, we can't slide along and cut this side and that side easily. So what we need to do is we need to transfer this line to the other side of the box so that when we flip it over, we've got a line to work to on that side. So I'm just putting a line here on the top. Keep up with it. My line on the other side. Okay, over to the drop saw. So what I'm going to do is here, I'm going to use the same edge for the whole process. And I'm just going to set that up so I'm cutting on the outside of the line. I'm not going to actually cut on the line at this stage. I want the piece to be too big so that it doesn't fit. Okay. Turn it over and do exactly the same on the other side. And this process is because I have that laser light set in such a way that I'm using the left hand part of it for my fit, for my cut. As you can see, that still doesn't quite fit. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to creep up onto those lines. A little cut at a time. Still not quite in there. Almost there. Again, another little cut. This gives me the best accuracy I can get. So what I'm actually doing there is I'm pushing a piece of timber up against the inside edge of the blade and disregarding the kerf on the teeth. And once I've got that set there, lift the saw and the kerf is about 1/4 millimetre trimming. It means I can be very accurate without having to put measurements down. There we go.
There you go.
Look at that. It's spot on. Fits in there. Actually, I think I might have taken a bit too much off, but I think we'll be fine. And now I need to cut the back off it. So when we cut the back off it, what I'm going to do is where you can see where my joint comes to a point just there. Same on this end. So all I'm going to do is use that mark and just cut my back off so that I've got it so fitting nicely. And there's my joint actually meeting right on the corner.
So you can look at that one.
So you can see where the joint meets on the corner, and it's perfect. Okay, so go back to the box. And when we put the box, when I put the lid in there, it fits quite nice. That's what's going to happen. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to clamp that in place because we need to mark where the hinges are going to go. So get a couple of clamps. I'm going to use 2 clamps because I'm also going to use them as a stay. So let's make sure they're flush at both ends. Like I say, this processing is something where you need a little patience. I just want to hold that lid in place. Now put it in the vise if I like, but okay, so I'm flush there and I'm flush on the back of there. Now if I sit the box on its front, what I can do here is I can mark where the 2 hinges go. So if I push my square up to the back edge of the hinge, I can put that into there. Push my square up to there, I put a mark there. I'll do the same on the other end. Now the outside of the pencil mark is actually the where we need to cut things to. This is our markings. So keep that in mind. This is my next step. Turn the box over, or turn the lid over. I've got a bench full of rubbish again. And a small square. Okay, next step is measure the thickness of your material and be very accurate with this. You can see it is exactly 10 millimeters thick. Okay, so the inside line to inside line 10 millimeters. And here, we'll do exactly the same thing, 10 mil. On this end we'll do the same. I could set up a marking gauge to do this, but I find this is just as efficient. And there we have our markings. Now, what we need to do now is we need to remove 2 millimeters of that material. So let me take some of the stuff off the bench and set up. And this is going to take more than 10 minutes, folks, so bear with us. And if it's raining at your place, stay tucked up from your TV and I'll entertain you. Just got to make some room here so that I can carry on the next task. Bench back, that off there. I'm going to need my chisel. I don't need the file just yet, but I will be using it again. Okay. Now, this is the technique that I use. Clamp. Have a second on the base. Clamp our piece of timber to the bench. The scribing knife. Now square. Now what I do here is I cut inside my pencil line. Just cut across the grain so that I've got a sharp edge. This one here I'll put the square on the line, so I'm cutting inside the line. This end. I don't actually want the hinge to fit in here. I want to dress it to fit the hinge after I've removed the bulk of the material. Now, along the back edge, sit my ruler on the line. clamp it in place. Keep moving things out of the way. Okay, now with my rule, just cut along the back there. The reason I put the ruler is because if the grain is offset or at a bit of an angle, your blade will tend to follow the grain, and we don't want that to happen. We want it to cut along the grain. Okay, once we've got it to that stage, what we've got is we've got a cut around where the hinge is going to go. Now I'm going to slide that out so that there's actually no support underneath at this stage. It's not, but it's not a problem. I have a little Makita router, just a mini one. Now I'm in the fortunate position where I can actually have one of these set aside. You'll have to excuse me, my nose is running. I'm in one of the fortunate positions where I can have a tool set up for a purpose. Now, because I do lots of boxes, I have this tool set up exactly for this purpose only. So it sits in the workshop and this is the only thing it does. I've got it set with a TSR-W5 router bit, end cut, and it's set to exactly those hinges. Now when I run out of those hinges, I'm going to have to reset this to something new, but at the moment that's all it's for. So all I'm going to do here is remove the waste. So all I've done there is just remove the bulk of the waste. Now we trim up to fit. And when you do that, make sure you've got support underneath the frame. And it's out with my little trusty chisel. Now I do all this by hand. I do not get into it with a mallet. If you have to get into it with a mallet, by all means use a different chisel or something that's a little bit heavier. And one thing to remember about these implements, they're a cutting tool. If you have your fingers in front of it and you slip, you're going to cut yourself. It is not a lever, so I do not push in there and then lever the whole piece out, which is what quite a lot of people do. If it doesn't come out when you've cut it, you've got to recut it. And it should pop out quite easily if you make sure you cut around the edges of it. You can see that's just popped up there. just like that. You can hear that cutting when you cut it properly. I know a lot of people say to me, I don't have the patience to do that, or I don't have my hands are too shaky, or various other reasons. It's a matter of actually working out how you can go about getting it done. You'll notice, for a start, my fingers are behind the blade, and I'm cutting the stuff out, I'm not levering it out. There's one.
Excellent, looks beautiful.
They come up nice. Again, this is a thing where I get asked, is there a quicker way of doing this? If you've got one, well then, good on you.
Share.
But I find sometimes this is very therapeutic. When I'm doing lots of boxes and I'm doing this, it gives me time to think about new designs, it gives me time to think about ways of improving some of the things that I do in my workshop.
But it's important that the art of using hand tools is not lost. Because there is a place for it in the workshop where we've got all this beautiful machinery. It's so nice to be able to work with a beautiful chisel or a beautiful square. There's just nothing like it.
I hope you haven't fallen asleep.
Well, you did say it was therapeutic.
Yeah, it was. So just go carefully when you're cutting these. It's just, it is something that needs to have that little bit of patience. If things aren't coming out nicely with your chisel, sharpen the chisel. And there we have rebates for the hinges. Let's see how close we are. I know it's not going to fit on there because that's the way we're doing it. We may be pretty close though. Okay. That one's spot on. This one just needs a little bit off this end here and it'll be perfect fit as well. So a little bit off the end of there. I'm just going to make sure that we cut on the outside of the line this time. Oh, a little undercut there sometimes doesn't hurt.
So you'd call that a 15th?
You might call it that.
Yeah.
A bee's knee.
A tad.
A tad.
An iota.
A little bit.
A tiny bit.
Should just about fit, I think.
Is that it? Gotcha.
Something's stopping there. I think it's this end here. That's right. Just a little bit on that end there, I can see. Clamp that down, I don't want it moving. Didn't quite get it all. The rain stopped. I could have put the square on there and cramped the square in place and then used the square as my end gauge. I like to have a little practice at getting things right without some age. And you can see we have a really nice fit. Okay.
That's looking good.
So for this exercise, I think I might cramp that lid down just to hold it in place. Now again, only one hole. And the screws I used for this one are even smaller than the first two I used. Just going to take one of those away, I don't need three at this stage. And here's the pudgy finger job again. I'll get it. It's all good. That's one. You can see they're not solid brass screws, we've got steel screws with a brass coating. Solid brass screws wouldn't stick to the magnetic end of my screwdriver. Alright, now here's the litmus test. Can we close it without it? Have we got it straight? I'm not going to even try and close it. I forgot. What we need to do here is give this corner a little bit of relief. I need to take a bit out of there and take a bit out of there.
So the reverse of the other side.
So the reverse of the other side of the hinge. as Pam said earlier, you want to be able to take the hinges off and on regularly or often. Which is going to be the easiest way to do this for me. I have to sit it. I think I have to sit it here. There. Oh. This is going to be a bit of fun. If I put it there, I can go on that side and I can use that. Okay, so clamp that on to the bench. Find my little file. A bit of relief. This one the same.
So Cole, can you just explain why, when you're drilling for the hinges in this early stage, you only cut and fit one hole?
Correct.
Can you explain why you do that?
The reason I use one hole at this stage, and I probably won't put the other one in until such time as I've put a finish on the box. If at some stage during the process of anything else happening to the box, in the processing of the box itself, the hinges move, or I break a screw off, or something occurs out of the ordinary that's going to interfere with fitting the hinges, I don't have to plug two sets of holes. I can just refit one and then just plug one hole, so that less work. It just caters for any errors that you might happen during the fitting of hinges, the finishing of the box. If you break a hinge, you've only got to pull out one screw, and so on. And that's why I only do one at a time. If I have to alter things, I'll have to go on the other side. If I have to alter anything, I haven't got so many repairs to do. These pudgy fingers are a bit of an issue, eh, Pam?
Well, you seem to have worked really well up till now. It's not... You just drop a few screws.
I don't think I'm the only one with pudgy fingers.
Yeah, this is true.
Come on, hold still.
Okay.
That's pretty good. Just a little bit tight one end, so it looks like it's got a bit more of a gap on this end than this end. It's easy enough to fix, it's just going to stand a little bit off there and we've got a perfect fit. Flush at the back. We've got a little overlap at the front, but basically there's my hinged box.
Stunning.
So we might call it quits there. There are a few other things that I need to do to the box, and that'll probably take me about an hour or so next week. And I think I might cover the a bit of finishing. I might cover a bit of dressing. I need to dress the ends of the top of the boxes to round them over and soften them. I need to dress the bottom edges of a couple of boxes. So there's a few things that I need to do to go through and do the finishing of the boxes. One of the other things that it sort of got out of, it sort of disappeared off the scene was that this is series 2 of these boxes, and series 2 was the use of the mini jig to cut our butterflies, our dovetails, and as you can see they're reasonable distance apart, and the two different styles of hinging and making the boxes was this one that we've just finished now with the frame and panel lid, and of course the hinging technique, and this one here where we have a solid lid, and we had pins that actually hold that lid in place. Smaller box, it's what we call our simple box, but the technique was exactly the same. The technique I used to build that framework was exactly the same as I've used to do this one here. Different size, which gave us a different result. You can see this one has only got one large dovetail in the middle of it, you know, and it's got the two halves at the top and bottom, whereas this one has two dovetails and the halves at the top and the bottom. So the series was all about the use of the mini jig, and we're at a point now where all I'm doing is tidying up the boxes that we have. There's only one more box to make for this, and this will be series 3, and we'll be only making one of those boxes, which is a half box, so we'll have a look at that when the time comes. But next week what we're going to do is we're going to just tidy these up so that they're actually done. We'll put a finish on them, we'll clean up the edges, make them look really nice. We'll have a keeper. This one's got its keeper on it. This one here needs a keeper put on it, so we'll be doing that as well. And so we're going to get all of that sort of stuff sorted out. I'll have to show you how I make the keepers as well for this particular style of box. That will be part of next week's show. So we'll stop there. Now the rain stopped, so we'll be able to race inside now. Thanks for watching, folks. I hope you enjoyed today. It was a long, drawn-out little process of actually putting the hinges on, but anyway, that's what happens in a workshop. So
yeah, it was worth it.
Thanks for watching, and I will catch you all next week. Don't forget, thumbs ups and subscribe if you haven't subscribed already. Have a good week, everybody.